So for my creative project, I chose to do the creative design element for the play Intimate Apparel. I chose to present 3 different looks for 3 different characters in this play. The first look that I chose was of the character of Mrs. Van Buren in her undergarments clothes during her fittings with Esther. Mrs. Van Buren is a wealthy society woman who comes to Esther for her intimate apparel. I envisioned her to be a very well-dressed woman given her wealth and status. I chose to have her wearing a simple white corset and white bloomers that Esther had made for her. I thought that simple undergarments would highlight a practical use for the extravagant clothes she would most likely wear them under. However, to counteract the simplistic nature of the undergarments themselves, I chose to highlight Mrs. Van Buren's jewelry and shoes. She's dripping in blue and pink jewels, and her shoes are a shade of blue as well. This mix of simplicity and excessive is true to what the early 1900s in New York City were all about for a woman of Mrs. Van Buren's status. I thought that during her scenes at Esther's workshop, this would exemplify who she is without being overly exaggerate to take away from the scenes themselves, because a lot of important conversations happen between the two of them. The second look I chose to create was for George Armstrong. This is him working on the Panama Canal while he writes letters to his love Esther. I thought that the building of the Panama Canal was such a monumental moment in history that I wanted to emphasize it and use George's hardship to show why he is the way he is, as figured out later in the play. He's wearing simple overalls and dark boots with a dirty white collared shirt underneath. He's also wearing a black Panama hat as an allusion to the place where he is working. George's costume would be dirty and rough to exemplify the hard labor he participates in every day. I think including George in this costume in the play would give the audience some of George's background and allow them to see him visually before he returns to New York. The final look I created was for Esther herself. I chose to do this one for her working in the shop, for a scene of her working in her shop, doing fittings for the women that she makes intimate apparel for. I thought that she would be wearing a simple white dress, probably with a couple dirt marks and stains, and a gray half apron over her dress with black shoes. The sleeves of the dress would be large at the ends to create sort of a stylistic element to her otherwise plain look. I thought that Esther's look needed to be simple with dim colors in order to illustrate to the audience her societal status as well as her loneliness in life before she meets her partner, George, who inevitably she does not end up with. I again thought that since so many important moments of the play happened in her workplace, that the costume should play a more subtle role to not take away from the plot, but still be practical of something that someone of her status would wear during their work. I learned a great deal of experience from stepping into the role of a costume designer. Up until now, I really didn't realize the significance of what costumes mean to a production. I think that it's imperative that the costumes are true to the time period while also the societal status of the characters. And I also think it's important that each look is interesting, yet without being distracting. So finding this balance was harder than I originally thought, but in the end, the final product was worth it. Thank you!